Captain's Log, Subdate 200602.1. This toxic sludge needs some proper analysis. The computer has indicated it is of the life-ending variety, but I need to know more, especially if we are to encounter an issue that requires an outer pod repair. Welcome everyone to the halls of bracket in close bracket justice. Today we have quite a worthy contender for this. Before that, I'm going to be streaming on Twitch tonight. If you're at all interested in watching me play a casual fishing game, then please consider swinging by, link in the description down below. Today's perp is Leah Cordice. Cordice? C-O-R-D-I-C-E. There you go. By all means correct me down below. Doesn't matter. She's a perp. An inmate. Therefore, we shouldn't really give her too much respect by correctly pronouncing her name. This is the perp in question. Yes, hiding a face, but this is a corrected picture. This particular inmate is a 20-year-old mother of one, married mother of one, although I think divorced now, who has been sentenced to 30 months in prison for a crime that took place when she was 17 years old. This whole crime, by the way, reeks of the Jeremy Kyle Show tier nonsense, but of course it is with a huge dash of disgusting. The inmate in question had been studying childcare while working at a local nursery, where she had begun texting a 13-year-old boy. I wonder if anyone else has cottoned on as to where this goes next. She was 17 at the time, by the way, and he was 13 at the time, sending him flirty messages and pictures. And after a drunken night out, she went to his room and pulled his trousers down, where something then happened. Now, the thing that happened in question happened 5 times. The word for it starts with an R, ends with a D. This led to the inmate having a child, a daughter. Interestingly, she was seeing someone at the time, and he believed that he was the father of this child. At the time she was arrested, she was living with her husband, Mr. Daniel Robbins, who is an apprentice mechanic who believed he was the father. Understandably, after the DNA test, there was an argument between them, because, in his words, he had a secure job, nice place, a good relationship, essentially he had a good life. And then all got taken away from him, which would include his child, his wife, his home, and then his job. Quite disturbing. But we can go back a little first. See, in March 2017, the inmate was interviewed by a police officer after one of her friends sent an email to the nursery because they had found out about this highly inappropriate and criminal behaviour. The inmate blasted this, and that led to the former friend getting a harassment warning along with a penalty for wasting police time. I wonder if they got that rescinded and then summarily refunded. I certainly hope they did, by the way. In July of 2018, police interviewed after arresting the inmate, after the boy's mother had complained because she had cottoned on to what was going on. During the interview, the inmate claimed that the boy had a crush on her, and that he was the one making the advances. It is worth noting now that when this went to court, she continued that string of logic, going so far as to say that he was the one that had raped her. Right. Eventually, after much arguing and much hassle, a DNA test did in fact take place. The DNA test showed that with a probability of 14 million times more likely than not, that the 13-year-old boy was the father, which then handily led into the case, didn't it? The defence's position being she lacked any emotional maturity. This came from Tara McCarthy, who also defended her by saying that she did nothing wrong, with her lawyer saying that this is a desperately sad case all around. There are no winners. The age gap between the inmate and the victim is relatively limited. She's right, but one of them is a criminal and the other is a minor. She is a very immature person. She is still, and she certainly was then, and it makes the situation difficult. She does accept that this has had a significant impact on the victim. It is a situation that nobody really wants to be faced with. In the judge's statement on this, Judge Peter Clark said, The inmate asserted that the truth was that she had been by the victim on multiple occasions. It is understandably been urged on the court that psychiatric examination has found the inmate to be of borderline intellectual ability with an IQ of 70 to 85. Oof. I had and have difficulty with that assessment. The inmate gave evidence. She was clear in chief, and she was combative and agile in cross-examination. At one stage I had no alternative but to warn her that she was doing herself a disservice in her interaction with prosecution counsel. Suffice it to say she showed no remorse for the events. Indeed, I heard no indication from either the inmate or the victim that she held him in any particular affection. The evidence from at least one witness was of physical obsession and self-indulgence as opposed to emotional attachment. I'm going to add this in now because I know some of you are going to say it. She has mental issues. You're right. She does. But she still committed a crime, and therefore one must pay the piper for that. There is a victim impact statement I'd like to go through as well. With the boy being diagnosed with separation anxiety by a psychologist, which is a result of him having his child taken away by social services. With the boy telling the court, I cannot see my child and have not had any involvement with her recently. Seeing my daughter and then having her taken out of my life was very hard to cope with. It feels like I was punished for what I have been through. I hope in the future I can move on from this and have a relationship with my daughter. So what is the sentence for the inmate? For one multiple incident count of sexual activity with a child, the inmate was sentenced to 30 months detention in a young offenders institution. She is also subject to a sexual harm prevention order for 10 years. A sexual harm prevention order is issued by a court as a means of protecting certain groups of people from sexual harm, in this case, minors. Now they last for a minimum of 5 years and have no maximum length, with an SHPO remaining on police national computer databases for the rest of your life. Because of this SHPO, the inmate is also subject to the sex offenders register, where she has to sign. If one does not sign the SHPO, by the way, you are liable for up to 6 months imprisonment, a fine, or both. And it is possible, but not likely, it is possible to appeal it. As far as the sentence goes, I'm inclined to align myself with it, but I would replace 30 months detention with 30 months on Titan, or 30 months walking the cursed earth. And I do hope, sorely hope, that the young man who was a child at the time is able to get the help he needs and to have a long and healthy relationship with his child. I am a tad confused. Part of me thought, the moment she was arrested and the child taken by social services, that perhaps the child would go to one of the families. If I'm wrong here, please do correct me. But I've not found any information indicating where that child went, and I'm obviously not going to pry. But I do hope he is able to move on and have that relationship that he wants. There weren't many people like that when I was a child who wanted, as a father, to be involved in their children's lives. So in this case, one shouldn't look a gift horse in the mouth, and I'm sure he'd be a cracking dad, if given the chance. As I'm done with this, I would very much like to know what you think. Do you think perhaps she should go into the ISO cubes for longer? Or do you think a sentence more severe is necessary? As she has to sign the sex offenders register, her life is tarred for the rest of her life. Getting a job is going to be exceptionally difficult, as will living her life because, yes, people are going to know, especially as her face is all over the news now. So do let me know in the comments down below. If I don't see you on Twitch tonight, have a cracking Tuesday. Thank you all for listening.